Let's take a look at how we can create a chair that's built out of a bent plywood shell, and that one is resting on a pipe frame. I go to a site, I set everything to centimeters, create a sketch, and actually before I do anything, first I'm actually going to create myself a nice flat, kind of like an orthographic cross-section view of my design. So this is, for example, 60 centimeters, kind of like the front and the back end of my pipe legs. So I'm going to dimension this one since I'm drawing there already. My height is 48 centimeters, and this piece up there should be roughly 50 centimeters. That's kind of like maybe the width of the seed shell. And I want this one, those two, to be 48 centimeters apart. So I select both lines and plug in a dimension 48 there. Perfect. And for example, I can create a line there and there. Delete this one. This I move maybe over a little bit. Can I not move it over? I should be able to move it. Oh, there, but then it changes the dimension. Okay, let's put in a dimension there as well, 50. Okay, then all this starts to work. Oh, awesome. Now my complete sketch moved. Okay, time to recenter stuff. Okay, so this end point of my sketch, go to there, and then I simply move the whole piece 25 units to the left. Oh, 30, sorry, 30 because it's 60. Okay. And also for the moment, let's secure it so it cannot be moved. So sometimes you just have, for one point, either secure or otherwise constrain a line. Okay, so now I can move this one left and right, but not really up and down. So that's good. Okay. Out of curiosity, what's the length? 48, good. We can actually do interesting things like this. I select these 2 points and give me a dimension. So you see, maybe I could say, well, in the back I would like to have 6 centimeters. And what about these 2 points? Give me a dimension, 4 centimeters. Okay, now it tells me that I can't really constrain this because everything is over-constrained, which means those are not just dimensions, they're actually active dimensions that interactively define your design. So at one point, if it's all rigid, you can't add more. So let's see here. Maybe at the front I can put one in, not at the back. So that's one way, for example, how you could measure the distance, as you can see. Or if, for example, we would like to work with a degree, maybe do it this way, 84, see, and I'm more than sure that no, here we cannot. Oh, we can actually. No, we cannot there, because again, it's over constraint. Okay. So maybe this one, let's say 80. No, that's too much. 82, 81. Maybe keep it at this for the moment. So I'm trying to imagine, here's my seed shell, here's basically my front leg, my back leg, and up here I'm going to create another line, 50 long, enter, and I can rotate the line. So in the next step, I'm going to create a new sketch, and there are of course multiple strategies how you can do it. I could create a plane that is slightly at an angle, project most of this onto. I actually rather would like to have more the approach of a three-dimensional sketch, for which then the construction planes aren't really that useful for. So I will actually create a sketch on simply the ground plane. So create line, sketch here. And for example, I could start with the circle diameter, go to the back, and say maybe, what should we say? Let's say 3 centimeter pipe. You can change this later anyway nicely. And let's do the same in the front, 3 centimeters. Okay. Maybe those constraints we want to pull out a little bit more. Okay. So there's basically now the back and the front of our pipes. Now I could go ahead and, for example, draw myself somewhere a 50 centimeter long line. So I see this line is actually representing this line. This horizontal constraint I really don't need, so I'm going to delete it. Okay. And let's go into side view. So this one was touching here. I'm going down the grid, so my piece has to go to there. There, okay. Perfect. Yeah, this is still 50. Let's see. Yeah, it is. Good. Let's delete the constraints. Don't need them. And then from the endpoint to there and the endpoint to there, I'm creating myself another line. And here comes now the trick. You see currently this is all a flat sketch. I selected my 50 centimeter long midline and then go to move, and I'm simply pushing it up 48 centimeters. Okay. What do you see if I go to the back view? You see it is at an angle because the distance is just 1 centimeter. I can use the fillet tool to nicely round actually those corners. Let's do this one more time. There. And maybe at this point it will be good to introduce you to the spline and tangent, which is kind of like the align curve tool in Alias. So you see that I used actually the fillet to simply evenly trim these lines. And now I can go ahead, click spline, and then I click and drag my mouse along the same direction of the line. Go to the next point, click and drag, same direction, and click OK. So again, click and drag, click and drag. Most times it should work. In case it does not work, let's do it this way. I go to constraint, tangent, and say tangent this curve to this line, this curve tangent to this line. And there we are. Okay, let's leave it at this for the moment. Let's click Stop Sketch. Because now what we can do actually is we can go to Patch. Now this is a quick hack. But basically all we're doing here, we're generating some sort of geometry for a pipe. And later we will take stock pipe and then bend it, because we're going to make like a template for this shape. So we're not going to 3D print or cast this. So what we're going to build will function more as a representation. And because of that, instead of using the sweep, we can actually use loft and say loft this ring to this ring, which doesn't work because these rings are flat to each other. They're not looking at each other. And then we click this spline and say center line. And there we are. Now we have a nice looking pipe. Some things I don't like, because this is a G1, so a tangent curve. You see here the transition starts pretty quickly. Same here. So maybe we can go to edit this sketch, go to our side view. Let's take a look at this one. And you see there are those tangent handles. Now let's see if we can, or how easy it might be to actually give them some dimensions. And you see it is possible, but the sketch constraint is pushed to somewhere else. So for the moment, let's leave it, and let's see if we can pull this one closer. Yeah, we can. Can we pull this line up? Maybe. Not really. So, ooh, move to somewhere else. So maybe there. Let's try this one more time. Actually, with this one. But I just want the constraint actually to be aligned. So I say activate tangent handle. Let's see if maybe this way it will be a little bit easier when I select the handle. No, not really. Okay, so you see it's a little bit tricky and frustrating currently, the way how this works in 3D space. So I'm not going to do this. I'm going to try to do this a different way. So my handles here are actually activated. And what we can do, this one is going to be the easiest one. We can, for example, pull this one out a little bit. Centimeters really a lot. So really minus 0.5 centimeters there. And for example, here, click this point and let's move this one up and pay attention to what happens. You see the line below actually moves. And that is because in Fusion with splines, all these lines are fused together. In Alias, when this would be a blend curve aligned, it would really only react to how these input curves would behave. And in Fusion, when you adjust this curve, the other curves will react to it as well. So before we can do this, we can simply try this. We select this line, right mouse button, say fix, click our handle there. Let's see. See now, I told the software this line cannot be moved. And then when I adjust actually this handle, the software understands not to manipulate this line. So that's one very easy way to make sure that you can quickly adjust the handles for your blend curves without messing up your other lines. Activate the tangent handle. This one go up as well, 0.5 centimeter. And here the same. There. Okay, let's stop sketch and take a look how this one feels. Looks a little bit better. Maybe not as good as it was maybe before, because now this is a little bit pinched, so maybe the value I used was too much. So let's go back to here, click this one, move, and I move this one down actually by minus 0.25 centimeters. And this point move to there, minus 0.25. Okay, let's take a look. Yeah, well, you see actually this start to get a little bit better than, for example, the back one. So I will just simply do the same in the back as well. Click. Oh, where's my handle? There. Move this direction 0.25. And this one move down minus 0.25. Okay. And once you, at one point, if for example you want to deform the whole layout, so instead of just being all at a plane, maybe this leg should go to somewhere else, and maybe this part of my linear part should go up or down, then we can unfix those lines and move them around as well. Okay, we're nearly done. The only problem currently, we have a nice surface, and if we mirror it, so mirror this object along this plane, we see we built everything at the wall center. So I have to move my pipe over. Now I could actually in here simply go maybe there, say move this object, and then I would have to maybe reorient the piece. So this might be a little bit tricky. And I don't really want to fill up my timeline too much. You know what I can rather do is simply I go into edit, and that's the reason why I created this one on the ground plane. I can select these 3 lines. So our wood shell actually has to sit on something, so we need to put in at least 1 or 2 crossbars. To do this, actually we can simply make a sketch on the vertical plane between them. And the main reason is I can go ahead and, for example, put in an ellipse, like an elliptical part. Let's say something like this. That seems to be good. And let's show me the outline there. Copy and paste. Let's move this one over, maybe to there. Okay. Show this part again. And the easiest way now would be with Control or Apple, based on your operating system. We just extrude this one out until, for example, they intersect each other, and leave it there. Perfect. Okay. But chances are that this has to be slightly arced. So what we have to do is the following, and it's actually now what I'm going to demonstrate to you. It's actually somewhat similar to the way how, for example, alias might work with 3D sketching. So I'm going to 3D include the line. Whoops. First I have to go into sketching there. I 3D include this line from my leg sketch. The main reason for that is now I can create a spline from this center point and snap onto this line. And then from this line, snap, and there. Perfect. I can hide this for the moment, and you see there now this red line, and there are point constraints, so this spline always will rest on this line. Pretty nice. Good. Then I could select these two rings and just let them move down maybe by maybe a centimeter. Okay. Maybe from this view we can click this point and correct it. Same here. Okay, so this point move to there. Okay. And from this view you see the lines are kind of linear. So if we would actually extrude them, so what I'm going to do now is actually I'm going to use the sweep command. So sweep this one along this line. Okay. One more time. Sweep this one along this line. And then maybe let's make a mirror for this one and this one along this plane. Okay. There you can see now kind of like these pipes seem to be okay, but they're kind of pinched. And that would mean that would be welded together because we can't make pipes this way. And that's a cost issue. So what I could do is actually go into editing the sketch, go into a side view, and then make those handles actually activated. So when I click on them, and for example, try to align them in a way so that actually the tangent line is horizontal. There. Perfect. And there you see, it's a nice flow. With the handle line being horizontal, yeah, we maintained good curvature again. Or a good surface flow. Now I have actually a lot of those mirrors, and I would like to clean up my design a little bit. So this one actually I delete. And then go to here, edit. No. There. Okay. Click, right click. Interesting, there's no edit. There should be an edit. Double click it. That works. Okay. For objects, I on my Mac press Apple PC Control. I add this one to the mirror selection. Zip. There. Perfect. Okay, you saw that wasn't really that difficult. And this maybe gave you also a good idea about the 3D sketching, how this works. So if, for example, I would go into on this line height here, Yeah, so this line be selected, and if, for example, let's see if I can move it. Okay, yeah, see everything updated. Pretty awesome. Because in this sketch, so it's time to actually take a look at how we can create our wood shell. Should be a bent plywood material. So I go to side view, create a sketch somewhere here. Maybe I'm hiding for the moment that my bodies, and just show me my original sketch as a reference. And I can work with a spline. And I think I only need maybe 3 points there. Sketch is not visible. Oh, there. Okay. And then I can go ahead and maybe move those handles a little bit to kind of like sculpt maybe a shell I would be looking for. And at this point, maybe showing my bodies will be helpful, but I'm actually going to hide my pipes. All I want is actually, I would like to see just those crossbars. And there would be a small spacer between those pipes and my wood shell, so that I don't have to perfectly rest on it. So I can use this kind of like as a reference. Okay, maybe this is a little bit too far to the back. There. And I can continue fine-tuning the position and the shape of those handles. And you see with this, you can quite easily create a nice and smooth flow. Okay, let's say this one is good. We don't really need more. Now we have kind of like the center spline, but we also need something that helps us to sweep across this spline. So for example, this one I call shell spine. And I would like to have a profile sitting on this point, so we can use the sweep command and run it or sweep it along it. So for that I need to have a construction plane right at this point. So I can go to plane along path, click this path, and move it back till it hits the end. Click OK. Make a new sketch, click on this line, plane. And before I start sketching, I 3D include this point. So that's the end point of my sketch. So I can now actually snap to it. You see here I can't really snap to it, but there I can snap to this point. And the main reason for that is now basically I can click, and for example see kind of like the distance I can have. Let's do this one more time. There to there. Okay. Let's dimension this one, so it's 22, so the whole part is actually 44. Okay. Just only I want to oh, I was still inside the constraint command. Just wanted to delete the constraints actually. Okay. Then I'm going to create myself a line. Okay. Another line here. I can actually dimension them 3 centimeters. Here. This one as well, 3. Okay. Maybe this whole line here actually I simply change into one line. There. What happens if I change this one to 40? Okay, it moves that. Okay, good. Would like to have a perpendicular constraint between these two lines. Okay. And the midpoint of this line should always be on this point. Perfect. So if I change this one to 40, you see everything moves to it, but it got rotated. So one last constraint, horizontal to this line. Okay, so when I shorten this line, it has to remain horizontal. Perfect. Good. Now these three lines I can select and actually set as construction. And then I use my spline tool, zip, zip, zip. Have a nice arc. And you see all these dimensions are actually driving how I can create this arc. See when I change this one to 6, how the arc changes. So that's a really smart way. Click stop. We are good. This one, for example, I call cross top, kind of cross section top. And then I can use the sweep, this profile along this path. Okay. And there's my chair. Seriously, that wasn't too difficult. But let's say here I would like to have a little bit more control. Maybe this should be flat. So I need another profile there. So what I'm going to do, another path, another plane along this path to the end, a new sketch on there, 3D include this point, make a line from there, 20 and 20. So let's leave this one for the moment. Okay, so this time now we go to loft and say loft this to this along this line being a center line. Okay, let's take a look what we get. And there we see this is flat, and then it gets more roundish to the back. You also see my front line is a little bit, or my front profile is less wide, so my whole shell tapers back as well. Let's maybe call this one cross front. And I actually would like to change maybe the dimensioning. So this point to this point, 40. What happens if we make 45? Okay, it just grows that one way. Not really what I want. Let's see if we can actually do our constraints differently. So I just constrain this one. Okay. And there's an equal. So this one equal this one. Okay. Let's see what happens if we make this one 15. Ah, perfect. So you see, this line has to be equal this line. So if I only dimension one line, I can work with half the distance as well. So let's make my dimension visible. So for example, let's make this one 22, which will make it to 44. Maybe 35. There you see how how nicely you can now drive actually everything just by changing those values. So let's see actually what will happen in case now we're changed the sketch here a lot. I started to actually dislike it. Also, I'm going to clean up this a little bit so all my parts make more sense or nicely grouped. So edit sketch, let's take a look. And maybe this one is okay, so I leave this distance, but I would like to have another line added here. And currently I don't really dimension it. There. Oh, you know what? Let's try this one out. I'm curious if that will work. So you move over a centimeter, because I'm curious actually how the software will blend actually between a linear and a rounded profile. So edit, there, okay. So this profile to this profile along this one center line. Okay, just show me shaded. Yeah, okay, as expected. It's really tricky to do, to have kind of like a rounded profile and a linear profile, obviously. Okay, let's go back to here, and I'm going to punch in another spline there, there, and there. Actually, hold on, before I do this, I want this one to be perpendicular and then also dimensioned. So you see, all this dimensioning is quite some work to do, but it really pays off afterwards. And here, this line and this one, all normal. Okay, stop sketch. And we have to update this one because it's using actually the wrong parts of my sketches. Convert to center line. Okay, that's good. And maybe here now we give this a really minor arc, just a small bend. Maybe this one a little bit less drastic. Okay, so that didn't look, that doesn't look too bad. Let's add actually a thickness to it. Maybe, let's say 0.5 centimeters. So if I shrink the surface, keep in mind of a tidy radius, it will get tighter. And now I really would like to see how everything looks at the midline. So I could, for example, use my section view. And show me the origin there, this one. Let's go to side view, and there we can see actually there's a little bit space. There's a lot of space. So here properly I will have a bigger spacer and a smaller spacer. I could also move this one down so I can have 2 times the same type of spacer. Okay, so let's say you would like to cut something on top away. We make a really quick and dirty approach right now. So on this vertical plane, I'm going to create myself maybe, let's start maybe with something simple. Let's say a ring here. Okay, stop sketch. In this ring, I can go solid extrude and run it through it. And then automatically it will understand I would like to cut it out. See, that was pretty easy. If I go back to here, I can also be more creative. For example, do something like this. Of course, if I go to edit, I have to then include all those rings. There. Let's turn this into a Swiss cheese chair. So you see, pretty easy, not very complicated. Let's say we would like to have the top a little bit adjusted. The sketch I think is a little bit too crazy, so I'm moving those around a little bit. Just in the sketch. Nice thing is I don't have to update my extrude command. Okay. There, you see. So everything updated. I can actually, by the way, also make my sketches visible. Click this piece and then move this one around. Click OK. And we'll have the same effect. Okay, and this sketch, for example, I go into Edit and I'm going to take a spline there and there. Let's say maybe an arc like this. Okay, and I have to create a solid piece, kind of like in Revit they call this one a void geometry. So this part now I can extrude as well. So I add it and add this one to the cut geometry. And here you see this way then I actually cut out or trimmed the top part. So you see there's actually literally no limit to the way how you can do this. And whatever pattern or graphic or shape you put on it, you can cut out. Let's say actually we would, out of this normal wood shell, let me group those two and then actually I suppress this feature. That's kind of like design version A, let's say. Let's make another approach. So I would like something nicely be cut out. So I can do actually now the following. Go to a side view. I'm going to create a line on this sketch from a side through another one. And maybe like this. There. Okay. Oh, what's happening? Okay. Oh. Okay. Let's do it this way. This line I'm going to make a construction. And the main reason for that is simply this line is going to work as plane at an angle. There. You see it is running through or along the line. That's not perpendicular, it's parallel to it. And then I can create a new sketch on this one here. And I'm going to 3D include just this midline which I drew there. So I have it inside my sketch. And then I go to this view. See, now I can snap to it, click, let me click and click, snap to something there, okay. I have to adjust some of these handles so they're horizontal. Same here, horizontal, okay. And then this line I would like to mirror along again this line I projected into. Okay. So there we have kind of like an organic shape. Click Stop Sketch. And now what I could do is use, for example, the split body. So the body to split is this one. The splitting tool is this one. Okay. And didn't really, oh, it did. There you see, everything got split. But then I have to delete it, so it's not really ideal this way. What I'd rather do is actually a technique, the way how I work in Revit. I'm going to draw myself another really big rectangle. Rectangle there. So let's say from there down to here. Okay. Show the sketch, and then I say extrude. And you see now I can actually select the filling of my rectangle minus the surface of the shape I created first. And simply cut everything out, run it through completely. Oh, small problem. See, I'm also cutting out my legs. Oh, that's not good. Okay, so we might at this point have to change something. So this mirror tool here, I have to edit. So I guess in this point I have to deselect this one. No, wait, never mind. That was a silly comment what I did. I think we can simply hide this one, then it should work. Let's try this one again. Cut through. Okay, let's see if this worked. Yeah. Let's hide the shell. So, there you see, it's kind of like a really quick study of how the shell could look like. Of course, currently it's not really the most interesting organic shape, so because I'm using the mirror inside the sketch, you can see I can actually work just on one side, and the other side will be updated. That's actually fairly nice. And now here I'm running out of material, so what I actually have to do here is simply I have to increase now the width of my table to a lot. Not table, my seed shell. So that one was 50, so this one here now has to be 25, so it's the same. And you don't really see much of a difference because it's being trimmed at the same time. But if I go back and edit the sketch, you see now how much extra material I have to cut out. So now here I can move this one really further over. Okay, let's take a look. Yeah. Okay, and you can continue cutting everything out. And currently I simply use an organic shape. You can project or create any geometry and trim this one out. This is a pretty quick process to visualize this. Most times it can work fairly well. One downside is specifically when you pay attention to those surfaces here. Is this a line really perpendicular to here? So with not too crazy geometry, I think it works okay. Otherwise, we might have then to use a different technique. Let me show you how we can create a seat shell by actually working with a mid spline, a left, and then a right spline, and then we're going to use the loft to skin the surface. So you see I have everything else grouped, and also these groups, for example, are suppressed. So I do not really see all these sketches. Also, that means inside my browser, those objects do not appear, which is actually a pretty nice function. You see when I activate it, it's all there. If I suppress it, it's all gone. It's pretty nice. Okay, so let's create a new sketch for the mid part. And I'm going to use kind of like this as a reference again. So maybe click somewhere here, click there, okay. And you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to create myself a nice straight line this time, like this. Okay. And actually this one snap to there, move this one back a little bit, and then I go to the tangent constraint, this one to this one. Oh, doesn't work? Okay, now let's do it this way. From this line, click and drag out our tangent spline, click, okay. Same here, click and click. And then, because those are horizontal lines, I can easily now adjust the handles quite comfortably. So this way, for example, I mix a curved back, a totally straight seat, and then a curved front part. Maybe this point has to go back a little bit. Let's say like this. And maybe this should be a little bit bigger. And maybe this point move forward a little bit. Yeah. Okay. Perfect. So that's kind of like our midline. Before I continue with another sketch, I first now have to create an offset plane. So creating an offset. Now I can define, for example, how far. So for example, -22. Or actually, let's take a look, where's our leg? So I want maybe a little bit of space. Yeah, so this looks good actually, because you want to have a little gap between the metal and the wood. Perfect. So onto this one, I can create another sketch there. And I'm going to do the following thing. I'm going to not 3D include, but actually project those lines there. And then I turn everything else off so I can focus on this better. And the main reason why I did this is simply, now I can draw a line, and this line is equal than this line. And also here, for example, this is actually a grid point. I just made myself a line. And here, for example, I used the grids, okay. So maybe this was not necessarily that required, but you will see what I'm trying to do. So I could, for example, break the link. Let's see if we can actually show the handle. We can't, so there's no show tangent handle or so, which is why from those splines I'm going to delete all the lines, because then you see I patch in a new set of lines. Okay, this one maybe This line I delete because I don't need it anymore. And here I can click, so I have a position, click and drag out. This line I don't need anymore. So you see I use this basically as a helper. And now I can show my other sketch and then basically use this as a reference to maybe decide how I'm going to line up all these different parts. So maybe here I move this a little bit further and maybe a little bit like this. And let's see, what's the midline? That one. So here in this sketch I have to change this a little bit. And you see I'm trying to match all these lines. And I don't know if you noticed, I was switching between the different sketches, and this worked actually pretty nice. So I'm in sketch mode and I switch actually between the different sketches. It's pretty fantastic actually, this function. But now I'm curious why this line looks so different. So maybe let's try this one again. No, that's a different sketch. I can't draw this one right now. But let's take a look at this. Yeah, it doesn't work. Makes sense because that's not the same sketch. So I'll go to here, edit. What we have here, so that's also tangent. Okay, interesting. I simply noticed that these arcs are very different, even with the handles being mainly the same, and I didn't really understand why. So that's the reason why I clicked around, because I was curious what the reason for that was. Okay, so let's call this one outside line or profile. Okay, so this work I did on this curve or on the side, I don't really want to have to do twice on the other side. So what I can do now is actually the following. So let's go edit and see 22 centimeters. Perfect. So creating myself a new sketch on another offset plane, 22 centimeters. New sketch on this one here. Okay, I have to make this sketch to be in time first. Okay, so I guess what I did was a little bit confusing, so let me undo this one. So here's my one and my other offset plane. Then I create the sketch, drew it, and onto that one other construction plane I'm creating a new sketch there, but I'm not going to draw everything. Now what I'm going to do is simply project onto this sketch the profiles from this sketch. So number 1, 2, and 3. And the whole point is, if I actually go and adjust this sketch, this other sketch is being updated because it is, those lines are projected interactively from the sketch. So it's kind of like a mirror function. Okay, so what we can do now is actually quite fun. We go to loft, chain, that's good, you, loft to you, loft to you, and here we probably will shift. Yep, I have to select the different segments and object visibility. So we have to turn on body so we can see the objects. Click OK, and there's actually now our chair. So the advantage of this process is actually now I'm working with simply with profiles, and I have a little bit more control this way easily how each side should look like. So instead of working with a cross section and a center spline, I just work with left and right and midlines. So for example, this one we could call outside projected, because this one we really don't need to work with, or really can't, because most of our work is going to be done with this one. So this point, for example, if I move this one slightly forward, this other one is moved, and you see then we get a small interesting arc. Let's see what happens if maybe this point, if we move that one slightly up. Can we move this one just down? Okay. Well, now we have, as you can see from here, also a slight slope. So there's a little gap, which means actually in this line, we can maybe move down a little bit. Now it's actually sitting directly on the plate. Maybe actually here, let's go and edit that sketch. Maybe this point I would like to move back a little bit. Okay. See now how this bellies out a little bit more, and then to the top it gets flatter. Also, you can see from here this is horizontally straight. If maybe from this view I would like this to be arced, well, that's easy. Simply this point, we can click, select, move down maybe a notch, and there you see now it's arced. Maybe the same here. This one we move up. There. So this is actually another quite nice way how you could create a shell and work with it. This point maybe now, let's move this one a snap forward there. Okay. And then to finish this one, basically would be the same. We could give this a thickness, maybe centimeter. See, does it go into the right direction? Yes, it does. Okay. Now I feel like these points are way too far outside, so maybe select both points, move them inwards more. Oh, okay, I guess then I have to do this point by hand in a secondary step. Wait, what did I select? Just wanted to select this point. But why does it select the mesh? Okay. Then maybe for the moment simply let's hide it, so the software doesn't get confused with what point I'm actually trying to move. There. Okay. And maybe those points we want to move in as well. Yeah, we're getting closer to something I like. But you see, it's basically now fine-tuning the transitions, and I guess what I'm looking for at one point later, what I will do is make this arc flow nicely the shape of the pipe. Okay, that was basically everything to how to create share with a bent plywood shell, 2 different ways, and also how to create a nice and well-working pipe system. And then again, this is just conceptually. You see everything is kind of like hollow. There are no real solids in it. And also because pipes are later, we would manufacture, weld, cut everything by hand together. So the model is rather crude because it's just more for exploring the shape. Because if I would try to build this one, then I would measure out the length of it. I would make a longer pipe, because then here later, if with the final piece, then I would cut, grind everything. I would bend the pipe. So as long as it's not really a computer model that's being put right into like making an injection mold for mass production, so if it's more for manual manufacturing, something like this is totally sufficient.